Welcome to this edition of Monitoring the Pulse. I am your host, Arash Bakhshandehpour. We have a fun episode planned for you and conversation planned for you for today. I am joined by the founder of CYXX Limited, Cyrus Laurent, also a local founder here from Utah as well. Cyrus, thanks for joining.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I think the way I like to kick this off is tell the audience, share with everyone who you are and what CYXX does.
Yeah, for sure. So I am Cyrus Laurent. Again, Salt Lake City native. Um, CYXX is a marketing design firm, kind of built out of the necessity of getting people away from, the fast fashion of marketing and brand design, which is, riding the wave of AI at this point. So that's probably the best I can do as far as positioning.
Cyrus, the thing that I think really intrigued me when we spoke last time was kind of like your path to the
Yeah.
idea of CYXX and finding CYXX. So if you don't mind, kind of walk us through that journey of how you got from point A all the way to Z, where you are today.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, as Arash said, I have a pretty weird background, and it's all good things, right? So I graduated, we rewind to 2013. I'm pretty old. So, um, if when I graduated high school, I graduated with an Associates of Art. And I've always been and always have been super interested in art, transitioned into getting a chemical engineering degree at the University of Utah, and then built kind of a software tech type career. And then I left my job in November of last year to basically found this company, which is CYXX, and it's kind of like we've gone full circle back to art and design, and it feels super aligned, and it's really great. Yeah, I'm super excited.
And for anyone interested, also, if you do a skim of Cyrus's LinkedIn, you'll see also some DJ work as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. So never really lost that artistic touch.
no.
I'd love to hear about with where you are now, right? Like you talked about, kind of leaving the corporate world, taking this leap into entrepreneurship. How have you approached the idea of go to market with UXX?
So we're in an interesting position for sure. CYXX is launching right now. Um, but the successful launch has been in how I think I've approached it. Coming from engineering, I kind of built like a generic agency offering everything to everyone. And instead, I'm launching with with radical specificity from. So we have a tagline called "From Ambiguity to Identity" for brands that are, again, beautifully suspicious of cookie cutter solutions. So the success, um, I don't anticipate will be in client count. It will be like around the clarity of like the clients that we serve. So we're really looking for people that, don't want the cookie cutter, don't want an agency that's just going to give them an AI solution that they or an employee of theirs could have created in 15 minutes. So yeah,
Yeah, so it's high value, high intent. I think that the tagline you mentioned, you said from ambiguity to what was
identity.
the identity? That's strong. And as you kind of go into market with the idea of CUXX, and I know when you and I spoke, you alluded to having done a little bit of market research and getting some feedback on product projects as well. Would love to hear like what that process was like for you.
Yeah. So coming from tech, I obviously have a huge network of people that are founders, that work in SaaS, that work in, various kind of facets of technology. And when I was kind of building this design, it started with a local network. Like it started with me asking questions to those people, thinking like, okay, my engineering brain said, hey, let's see how many people that I know would be interested in a service like this or are interested or even thinking about, rebranding or worried about their presence in the market in terms of how it looks. And I think very rapidly the need is there. However, consistently got the question of like, well, I heard AI is being used for this, like kind of what are you going to be using AI or like kind of how does that fit in and like all these, interesting questions. And as we talked before, I kind of let you know that like I think that there's gonna be kind of like an anti-AI movement, at least with creative type jobs and industry, just simply because it's like fast fashion. It's like, yes, it's the latest and greatest right now, but I think that we're gonna rapidly evolve to be able to identify things that have been built by AI instead of a human. So we're losing that human touch, and I think we'll kind of regress back into, if it's human made, it's higher quality.
Sure. That piece resonates, I think, really strongly with me. There's almost been this, like, call it saturation, but it feels like we're on the precipice of almost like a market correction of the adoption of AI, especially in the creative space. Going back to what you mentioned earlier, which is like the stronghold for a lot of businesses is their authenticity, is their brand and their brand integrity. And I think that's one of the things that CYXX is really going to be addressing. A piece that I'd like for you to expand on a little bit is, so you have went through the ideation phase, and you're now fully fledged in execution phase of taking to market and positioning in market and client acquisition. How have you approached differentiation in a market where there are design studios or design agencies, some heavily leaning on AI, some have like very specific niches that they might address?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think we left safety in the past, which is interesting. So coming back from the question that you just asked, it would have been easy for me to just niche into, building websites for like engineering and SaaS and like those types of things. So I think our differentiation is philosophical before it's tactical. Um, Most agencies sell creative services like logos, websites, brand guides. We're trying to sell clarity. Like our tagline is from ambiguity to identity because we are specifically positioning for brands that don't have that figured out yet. We want people who are suspicious of generic solutions and know that those things are not going to work with them. So practically, this comes from my background in engineering, but I started with an associate's in art. So I really want to get back to the roots of like, what was it that I really loved about art and design, and like what kind of like ignites that creative like fire, and can people will people notice if it's, something I created in 15 minutes versus something I created in maybe like 2 days or something. And I think the answer is yes. So that's kind of the hypothesis we're running off of here.
So many strong things there. I think you mentioned like we left safety in the past, philosophical before being tactical, and then simply selling clarity. I'm curious as you speak with like brands that want to refine their identity or want to come to you for some feedback or some direction. What does that discussion look like? Because I imagine that's where that differentiation piece that you were kind of alluding to comes. Is that engagement level with the brands of defining what is authentic for them? What do those conversations look like?
Yeah, they're super interesting. Again, I try to be non-linear with it. I'll ask questions like, standard questions like, you know, if you were to describe your brand, how does it like look and feel? Like, just the generic things that, you could put into ChatGPT and be like, what do I ask a client? But I think there is mm, the secret sauce and the power comes in the connection that's made. I think like if you're really, really paying attention to your client, you can kind of see where there might be a thread that you can pull, and they might not think about what they're about to tell you before they tell you, and they might discover it themselves. Like I thought that I wanted my brand to be this because I saw that somebody else had executed it this way so well, right? But when you actually like kind of get down into it, sometimes I think the client will realize like, oh wait, that's actually not gonna fit for me. Like, we're not the Rolex of, tests or whatever, industry niche they're in, or like yeah, so, those types of, like, premium marketing strategies or, like, the looks and feels that maybe, like, that premium kind of brand would put on, what actually doesn't really fit the service or the product that they're trying to sell, so it's been super interesting.
Yeah, I can really relate to like almost asking enough question, posing the right questions to identify a thread that you can kind of pull from. Uh, my background being in the sales world and coming from the sales experience, like the best sales reps and the best sales people that I've crossed paths with are the ones that continue to dig, as opposed to telling you're asking, as opposed to speaking, you're listening. And that just gives you an opportunity to really peel back the layers of the onion and kind of get to the core of what you're actually dealing with. And then from there, it's directionally, it can become a lot more clear, I think, for everyone kind of involved. So I couldn't agree
Yeah,
more.
totally.
No two conversations like those discovery conversations are ever the same. They are so interesting, especially because everyone has an idea of what they want their business to be represented as, what they want their reputation to be in market, right? And then taking that from a person's brain, drawing that thread and pulling it all the way through to ideation and execution, like that's a skill. It's like that's a really impressive skill and something that I think, to your point, a lot of agencies maybe neglect doing effectively. So, so
Yeah.
in the conversations you've had thus far, and the clients that you have worked with thus far, and kind of as you're anticipating things, I'd like to hear, let's say hypothetically, you're speaking to an audience of peers, and what's the single biggest insight or lesson that you would share with them? Peers being agency founders or studio founders, and entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the biggest challenge at this stage is resisting the pressure to dilute. Like when you're pre-revenue or early stage, every kind of inquiry or like kind of warm lead feels precious. So I think there's going to be pressure, internal and external, to take on work that doesn't fit our positioning just to build cash flow. The challenge is, I think, for us is going to be staying disciplined about who we work with and what we say no to and like why we're saying no to that. Tactically, I think it's balancing creative work with building business and infrastructure. So, like, I could go in and design brand systems all day. Like, that's super easy. But I think the challenge is going to be building the operational systems, the pricing models, the client experience, like the financial stability, all while maintaining that creative quality. That's our entire value proposition. So I think it's going to be a huge juggling act, but I think, the best advice I could give is just be super clear, right? Be super clear and intentional, make sure that you know where those boundaries and values kind of lie, and then use that as your kind of guiding principles.
Yeah, I think when you and I spoke last time, I think I touched on this too. You see an idea taken to market for a business, and it's new and it's in its infancy or early stages. And because of a high ticket partnership or a high ticket client, very quickly businesses can find themselves veering off of the path of what they initially went to market with. And then from there, you're kind of chasing this carrot that has totally taken you, blocks and city blocks and counties away from the direction you were initially trying to go. So oftentimes there's a course correction, or it can be an impediment to the progress that you're kind of building out as a business. So I love the idea of kind of maintaining business boundaries, right? Like that's
Yeah, yeah. One of the very first engineering firms that I worked for had a huge like healthcare system that was, I don't know, probably like 60% of their revenue or something or more. And they kind of like molded around what this like client wanted. Mm, And it really veered away from the core concept of why they started the business. And you saw this kind of like spider out into some of their other ventures as well. So they had like two startups under the same kind of umbrella. And that all of the business names sounded like shell companies too, which is wild. They incredibly, yeah, they lacked clarity and it showed, and it definitely showed when they got acquired. I think that if they would have stayed kind of true to what they needed and wanted to do, A, they would have been bought for probably way more money, and then B, they wouldn't have been, chasing that carrot or just basically being a part of that large health system as an extension. That should have been a department at that large health system rather than, like, being hired out or whatever, so it's pretty
no question.
interesting.
Those stories are a rabbit. It's so interesting, especially
Yeah.
here in, like, in the state, right? Because there's so many great ideas that there's also like some pretty strong large corporations here that are leveraged for partnerships, and you see that happen a lot, very often. Something that you hit on that I'd like for you to expand on a little bit, Cyrus, is I like to draw some like specific anecdotal instances, times where maybe there was a partnership or a client or a transaction that you had to walk away from, whether it was like to maintain the brand integrity or maintain like the value proposition and direction that you wanted to pursue with CYXX?
Yeah, 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 yeah. For sure, yeah. Um, a really good example was, I was approached by a investment firm in the technology industry. Nothing crazy. They were essentially starting their portfolio and kind of acquiring these like smaller tech startups. And then their whole like business prop was to um, take them on and then kind of like train the founders and help them build their like brand identities as well as help them optimize their like go to market models and operational models. And then the other piece of it was introducing AI into business operations and behind the scenes kind of applications, if that makes sense. This would have been a pretty big opportunity for CYXX, but because the intention of the firm was started with the investment firm, and I kinda got the feeling that, like, down the road, the strategy would change for this specific investment firm. Usually, investors are looking at, the bottom line, and they're trying to basically flip businesses to become profitable very quickly, and then sometimes those businesses get sold off to, private buyers or, they end up going public or something, and they no longer need that investment firm. Um so we made the decision to walk away from that opportunity, which would have been, steady cash flow over a few months. Yeah, and it could have turned into like a long-term partnership, but I don't really feel like that aligned with the values of our business. I think we would have been under the pressure to kind of build out these brand identities and systems very quickly, and that's not what we're trying to do here.
That has to be such a hard decision to
Totally.
walk away, especially like
Yeah.
what you mentioned earlier. It's like you know there's this dollar amount tied to this opportunity at the stage of
Yeah.
business that you're at that can help move things. What conversations were had with the firm
Oh,
as you
God.
were evaluating walking away? How did those
Yeah.
conversations go?
I mean, it sucks, obviously. It's just hard because it's like you spend so much time thinking about these things, and I think everyone when they found or they become a founder, they're looking at money as a huge motivator, right? What's the upside of owning your own business? Well, usually a lot of people make quite a bit of money, and so when you have those like early success type stories kind of dangled in front of you, it's just like gut wrenching because you're like, oh, I really want to do this, but it's like we can't. We're gonna immediately betray everything that we set up. So talking to a few advisors, I was just like, hey, like I'm kind of messed up inside about this. Like, what happens if, kind of going through those what if scenarios, and like, is there gonna be how many of those what if scenarios end in us doing something that we don't want to do? And then two, are we going to be the creators of our own destiny, right? And then I think if you take on a client that huge at the very beginning, you're always going to be chasing that carrot, like we were talking about in the last question. So yeah, it sucks. It sucks, but you got to do it.
Yeah, no question. Again, like I think it's imperative to game theory those conversations out. Like, what are all of the directions
Mhm.
that partnership could potentially take us? And then to your
Yeah.
point, weighing out the potential paths that veer you off of the path that you want to stay on versus the ones that help you stick to like the brand and business integrity that you are initially seeking out. So it's tricky. It's very, very tough. And what I'd like to hear, Chris, is again, like we talked about kind of the idea, the strategy with going to market, how you've positioned in market and how you'd like to position in market and what you want that reputation to be. Um, let's forecast a little. If you look at like the next 6 and 12 months here of 20, I would love to hear what you anticipate are like the largest, call it challenges or impediments to progress that you're kind of already planning against as you look at the year.
Yeah, yeah. I said this before, but I think it's really going to be balancing, those like business kind of pulls with the creative direction, like just doing this balancing act at the beginning. How much money are we spending versus how much are we making, and how many clients can we take on while still maintaining quality? And then, kind of, if we fast forward to the end of the 6 months, it's going to be, I think, a lot about scaling. We spoke a little bit before about like approach to hiring and like how are we going to find people that really kind of portray the values that we want to kind of put into the market, and what's the quality of work that goes there? So I think those are the huge things that are on my mind right now. Like agentic AI is going to be big for like business operations, I think for us, but we want to just be able to maintain that creative quality and direction and freedom. So really anything that we can do to get that going is going to be a no-brainer.
You actually a bit of a segue into like something that's always top of mind for me, as you mentioned, agentic AI is something that is going to be advantageous for you to kind of leverage in your current workflows, in your current processes, and in your current stack. How is CYXX already leveraging AI?
Yeah, I have a lot of strong opinions about AI, but one of them is like, I think really good use cases for large language models or just AI in general is just the ability to learn, right? So we use it for market research, looking at large data sets and kind of like understanding, positioning and those types of things. Sometimes we use it for rapidly creating like things like mood boards as well as, getting client packages out and like what that workflow looks like. We want to automate that as much as possible so that, the client feels like they're getting touches and we're not worried about crap. Did I email this client that we were supposed to, did I follow up with them? Like, we don't have the budget to hire a project manager and I don't think I have the time to kind of switch between all of those hats. So I think that's probably, yeah, the extent of AI that we're using currently.
You mentioned some strong opinions. I'm curious if you're comfortable sharing.
I don't know if we have time to open that box right now, but
I guess the parting question that I like to pose, and this is a bit of putting you on the spot, we've kind of touched on it, but I would want to ask it explicitly, is as you're continuing to build, continuing to go to market and positioning and understanding who your clientele are and maintaining brand integrity, like kind of maintaining your value proposition and identity there, how do you want CYXX to be perceived in the market? What do you want the reputation to be?
yeah, I think just high quality, consistent. I want our employees to be kind. I want our clients to feel heard without the cheesiness. So, yeah, I just want to be, a business that our clients feel like they can lean on, they can come back to, they can ask questions, and that they ultimately recommend to, other businesses. And I think that's just going to be the best way to organically grow.
No question. I don't want. I think it's a bit of a cliche to say, but I also think that there's a reason it's a cliche. It's because it's true, which is especially on the agency front and on the studio front, it truly is like an extension of the business. It's a bit of a literal partnership, like a brand partnership, and understanding the identity and maintaining that relationship. So, like you said, that relationship doesn't necessarily end when creative is done because things can always continue
Yes.
with additional strategies. Cyrus, thank you so much for the time. For everyone and anyone interested, it is Cyrus Laurent, Cyrus. Last name is Laurent on LinkedIn. Keep a close eye on CYXX, especially here in the local market. Again, Cyrus, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.